lesson on how to make vegan brownies. So I'm going to walk you through how to follow this recipe, as well as how to measure using fractions. So let's start by reviewing what fractions are. We've talked about them a little bit in class, but here's a little review. So a fraction is a quantity or amount that is not a whole number. So we know our counting numbers are whole numbers like 1, 2, and 3. Fractions are the ones that are in between those numbers. Let's say I had an apple and I broke it into 2 pieces. So it used to be the apple the whole, but then I took it apart. And let's say that I ate one of those pieces. So then I had this one piece left. And remember when we took the apple and cut it in half, we had 2 separate halves. So we would call this apple left 1/2. And we would write that 1/2. So in cooking and baking, fractions are used all the time to measure quantities. It either starts from the cup or the tablespoon or the teaspoon. So these are all measurements that are universal across, pretty much all kinds of baking. So for our recipe, we're going to be just using the cup and the teaspoon. I'll begin flashing the ingredients across the bottom of the screen so you can see what we're using. But then also remember that there's a document that you can download that will tell you all of the ingredients you need, as well as how to do the recipe. Alright, before I start mixing the ingredients together, I need to preheat my oven. So we need to preheat it to 350 degrees. So I've got it on bake, 350 degrees. The way we're making the vegan is by using avocado. So I have gone ahead and taken a 1/4 cup of avocado, which is what our recipe calls for. Now, the measuring cups that I have, they come in 1 cup that's whole like this, and then this is 1/2 of a cup. Now remember, we needed 1/4 of a cup. So, the tricky thing about fractions is that the number on the bottom, which is called the denominator, when that gets bigger, the number actually gets smaller. So remember, when the denominator on the bottom gets bigger, the number is smaller. So we had 1 whole cup, and then we had 1/2 cup. So in 1 whole cup, the fraction will read 1/1. But in 1/2 cup, the fraction will read 1/2. And the 1/2 cup is smaller. So you can see when you compare these two that this one's smaller and this one's bigger. Now, I don't have a 1/4 cup of measuring, but in my 1/2 cup, I have a line here that tells me that this is 1/4 of a cup. So I have gone ahead and taken the avocado and filled it up only to this line here. You can see the line in there as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that to my mixing bowl here. Oops, forgot to get a utensil. So I'm going to take the 1/4 cup of avocado and put that into my bowl. Alright, with that done, I also need to add 1/4 cup of some olive oil. So for this, I'm going to use the same measurement, and I'm just going to take my olive oil and pour a 1/4 of a cup up to the line. Alright. And we'll pour that in. Make sure we get all of it out there. And then I'm going to start mixing it up. The avocado is soft to begin with, so we're going to want to mash it up a little bit and see if we can get it combined as we can. Okay, let's see if I can show you a little bit. It's kind of on the bottom there, but it's all mixed up. Okay, the next measurement we're going to do is, let's see, so we've added those 2 ingredients together, and now we're going to add about 6 ingredients together. So, start from the beginning. The first one is 1 cup of flour. So we talked about how one measurement, a cup, is about this much, and it's a full whole number. So it's not a fraction, but we can write it as a fraction, as 1/1. Alright, so I'm going to take my whole cup, and I'm going to get my flour, 1 full cup of flour. Alright, so there's 1 cup of flour, and we're going to just dump that right on in. Okay, 1 cup of flour. I need 1/2 a cup of cocoa powder. So remember we talked about how this was a 1/2 cup, so I'm going to put the cocoa powder in up to the very top. Alright, so I've got my cocoa powder here. Cocoa powder is notoriously powdery, so we're going to see how this works. Excellent. Alright, so I have 1/2 a cup of cocoa powder. You can see that in there. I'm going to, dump that in. Okay. And since I had other ingredients in this, it's a good idea to use a spoon to get them out. I don't wash all my cups in between because it takes a long time, and also all the ingredients are going in the same place. So for me, and I don't have all that many fourth cups. So just have to work to get all the ingredients out. Okay? Alright, after the cocoa powder, we need 3/4 of a cup of sugar. Alright, so for 3/4 of a cup, we can measure this in two different ways. We can either take, so if we went 3/4, remember we took 1/4 of avocado and 1/4 of olive oil, we could take 3 of those fourths and add that together. So to do that, I would take my 4th cup and I would add 1/4 and 2/4, so that would fill it up to the top. Dump that in, and then add a 3/4 just up to this line here, and that would be 3/4. But I'm going to do it a different way because I have 1 cup here, and when I think about 1 cup and divide it into fourths, I can make 4 different sections. So the middle line here on this cup says it's 1/2, so we know that 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4 from this cup, because the 4th goes up to this line, and then the half goes, another 4th would take it up to the 1/2 cup line. So for this one, I'm going to fill this up 3/4 of the way. So I've got a 1/2 cup line here, and if I want to take half of this and add it again, I would go just about up to here. So I'm going to take 3/4 of this cup. So you might be able to just barely see that sugar. Yep, and then I'm going to dump that in. Alright, there's my sugar. Next I need a teaspoon measurement for the baking soda. So I have my baking soda here. Now remember, a teaspoon is pretty universal, so it's probably going to say 1 TSP. TSP stands for teaspoon. Alright, and this is only 1, so it's a full teaspoon. So there's no fractions involved. It's a part of a cup, but we don't know what that part of the cup is. That would be a great project to do. So 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And we'll put that in the top here. And then my last measurement is 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Alright, so a 1/2 teaspoon is taking this teaspoon measurement that I just put in of baking soda and cutting that in half. And usually you have one that says 1/2 teaspoon. So here's 1/2 teaspoon of salt. The last thing we need is 3/4 of a cup of water. So remember how we took 3/4 of a cup of sugar? We're going to do the same thing in this whole cup because it'll be easier to just put all the water in. So I'm going to measure about 3/4 of a cup of water and put that in. And then I'm going to begin to mix. Alright, so this is looking pretty good. You can kind of see that there. Alright. Alright, and then our last ingredient that we need to add is chocolate chips. So the recipe calls for a cup of chocolate chips, 1/2 of them, a cup of chocolate chips, but 1/2 of those 1 cup needs to be added before. They'll be folded into this mix, and then the other half will come in later. So I'm going to put half of a cup in now, so I've measured out the chocolate chips, and we'll put that in. Fold those in. And now I'm going to measure out another half of chocolate chips, but I'm going to save it for after we dump everything in, okay? There's another half. Okay? Alright, let's go to our baking pan. So I have a baking pan here. This is a square baking pan. And what we're going to do is I'm going to first take some canola spray and spray the sides, because if you don't spray it, it'll get very sticky. So just make sure all the sides are covered. Okay. And then I'm going to pour the batter into my pan. So take this here. I don't think I can turn the camera for you guys to see, but we'll dump it all in. Before we put it in the oven, we need to add those extra chocolate chips. So I'm going to take my 1/2 cup of chocolate chips and kind of sprinkle them on the top. Okay. And now, once this is all filled in, we're going to set it in the oven for about, I think it's 15 to 20 minutes, and we will see what happens after that. So I'll take my pan that's been laden with the batter and put it into the oven. Preheating. Okay, and now we wait and see what happens. So once you take the brownies out of the oven, they're all set to go. You can see them here. And then you can enjoy them. You can even cut them into different kinds of fractions. And I'll let you experiment with that on your own. Hope you enjoyed watching this video. Make sure to check out the recipe and the ingredients, and I hope you can make this on your own sometime.
Out there's a world outside of Yonkers, way out there beyond this hick town, Barnaby. There's a slick town, Barnaby, out there, full of shine and full of sparkle. Close your eyes and see it glisten, Barnaby. Listen, Barnaby.